Before we begin, let the silence settle around you. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel crawling into the corners of the room. The story I'm about to tell wasn't meant to be spoken out loud. Someone carried it alone for far too long, afraid that saying it would make it real again. If a piece of their truth touches something you've kept buried, you can tell me in the comments. And if these quiet shadows keep pulling you back, you can like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Now don't move. Some memories wake up when they're listened to. I still remember the taste of copper in the air that night, long before I understood why it was there. My name's Era. I narrate this now not because I want to, but because silence has become worse than remembering. I was 16 when it happened, old enough to mock the world, young enough to believe mockery could protect me. It was supposed to be the best birthday of my life. My parents rarely let me throw parties, but that year they finally agreed. They said I deserved one big memory before exams consumed everything. So, I planned a late October birthday, and because all of us were swept into the seasonal obsession, we wrapped it in playful horror. Not the real kind, plastic skulls, orange fairy lights, synthetic spider webs that smelled faintly like factory glue. None of it scared us. The laughter we carried in was louder than the shadows could ever be. The party took place in our house, a 2-story, slightly old place at the edge of town. The kind of house that creaks even when you pretend it doesn't. The floorboards would sigh under your heels like someone complaining in their sleep. I once thought it was charming. Now every sound like that makes my throat contract. Ria was the birthday girl, my best friend since we were 5, the loudest voice in every room, the son wearing boots. She was turning 17. She could make anything funny, even the cake, especially the cake. She designed it herself, a face cake, a full replica of her head sculpted in white fondant. Everyone joked it looked too real. They were right, but not in the way we meant. The sculptor Ria hired was a local college art student who worked in a bakery part-time, known for hyper-detailed cakes. When we opened the box that evening, the room collectively went quiet for a second. The cake's eyes were almost glassy, reflecting light too precisely. Her fondant hair was textured strand by strand in cold black icing. And the smile, it wasn't piped. It was carved, like it had bone beneath it. I felt the first tremor of unease then, a very personal one. The cake gave off a thin chemical sweetness layered beneath actual vanilla, almost nauseating, a smell like perfume sprayed on dessert to hide poison. The box it sat in looked normal, pink ribbons, plastic film, but the inside felt humid, warmer than it should have been. My fingertips brushed condensation when I shifted the plastic. Every bakery cake I'd ever touched was cool and dry. This one felt like breath pressed against glass. Bro, it sweats more than Ria does in PE, Sumer joked. Everyone snorted, including Ria. I forced a laugh. Maybe bright lights made it damp. We set the cake at the center of the table. The decorations were silly. Fake fog sprays, a rubber bat on a stick, foam tombstones propped like clumsy gatekeepers. The tablecloth was black with printed pumpkins, and the fabric was cold to the touch. Our house heater was off because too many bodies warm a room faster than machines do. Yet the cake stayed spring warm, lacquer humid. Someone turned down the music for the candle moment. We wanted dramatic silence. We just didn't know what silence could hold. As my mom placed the candles, 17 crooked little flames tipping like miniature lighthouses, there was a sound. I thought a guest's stomach had growled, but the tone was wetter, thicker, deep and slow, like someone inhaling through foam. The candle flames trembled, pulled by a draft that came from nowhere. Okay. Who breathed on my cake? Ria said, grinning. Then the breathing came again. From inside the box. All of us heard it. We froze like animals scenting danger but unsure which direction to dash. The box was open. No lid. Nothing to confine sound. Yet it definitely came from within. A shaky, rhythmic inhale, followed by a faint hitch. A heartbeat stutter. My pulse hammered behind my ears. The air felt thinner. Too tight. Too watched. The party lights flickered, though no switch had been touched. It was like the current hesitated, like it wanted to look away. Light it faster before it eats you, my brother teased from the doorway. He was 13, forever stirring jokes to cope with boredom. His grin slid off when he saw our faces. My mom backed up. The cake sat under candles now, each flame swaying not in celebration, but agitation. The breathing stopped. The stillness that replaced it was heavier than the sound. "Cut it, princess," Sumer said, voice smaller. Rhea grabbed the knife. Stainless steel, long and clean. It glinted white against the black cloth. She tapped the edge on her fondant chin like she was negotiating with her twin. The first slice changed the world. The fondant didn't part like sugar, peeled like skin. Slowly, reluctantly, underneath, instead of sponge or cream, there was a blister-red syrup waiting like a wound. The moment the blade slipped deeper, the cake shuddered. Just once. Subtle but unmistakable. The candles flared like startled eyes adjusting to violence. Then came the bleed. The red surged upward too fast to be decorative drizzle. It was thick, glossy, warm. It didn't smell of strawberries. It smelled of pennies and raw iron. Metallic steam exhaled from the cut like a predator sighing after a hit. The smell ballooned through the room until my stomach folded and pitched up its lunch. "Rhea," I whispered, unable to make sound properly. Rhea stumbled back. The knife slipped from her fingers and clanged. The syrup poured, faster now, violent, unrestrained. It gushed from her sliced cheek, her sliced neck, her fondant throat split like a real one. The table was drowning. The cloth turned ink-wet, heavy, glued to wood by sticky red glue. Drops pattered to the floor not like liquid, but footsteps. Then the whisper arrived, soft at first, an intimate breath carrying a name. "Era." I thought someone had speakers hidden. I thought someone prank-recorded lines. But the voice was Rhea's voice. Exactly. Scary inaccuracy. Except hers always carried sunlight. This carried basement cold. The red hissed where it touched the candles, sizzling like flesh meeting flame. The light above us shivered once, drained twice, and then died, snapping darkness over every corner like a lid closing over insects. Screams spilled out neurons before bodies could react. My parents shouted names. My brother rammed the hallway switch. The emergency light kicked in after a choking delay. Pale, weak, sickly. When the overhead LEDs blinked back, the table was empty. No cake, no box, no Rhea. The syrup stayed, still warm. The liquid was moving, not draining. Walking. A line of dripping prints, toes first, heels second, creating a path toward the basement door. Each print was perfectly human-shaped, except too long. Like someone stretched a foot until bone complained. My dad sprinted to the basement door before fear could coagulate. He ripped it open. The staircase yawned downward like a throat in a screaming match. The air exhaled upward, cold and damp, tasting of soil we never stored in our house. The kind of soil you bury rather than plant. We followed the prints down. The steps creaked wetly now, syrup sticking to soles. They weren't orange anymore. They were black with red luster. The basement lights weren't off because of the outage. Their bulbs were shattered. All of them. Tiny glass teeth glittered across the concrete. The prints didn't stop on the floor. They kept going. Toward a door we never used. A storage room my parents kept locked. The lock was open, split, metal bent outward, as if something strong pushed its way in, then something stronger dragged its way out. Inside the storage room there was no Rhea, no cake, no sign of celebration, just an outline on the wall, dark red at head height, splattered like someone had stood there for a single screaming heartbeat before being erased. Something sharp had skitter-carved loops onto the floor in frantic spirals, like someone listening, like someone answering whispers. At the far end, the prints vanished, not like footsteps taper off, like something lifted its legs and refused gravity. The police called it misconduct, a prank gone wrong, a runaway. They said the syrup was bakery mix, the breathing imagination, the footprints coincidences, the disappearance teenage rebellion. But no rebellion echoes back when you slice sugar. Even now, Every birthday candle I see flickers as if tugged by breath from somewhere lower than the world. Every humid sweetness coats my tongue like warning. And when it's quiet, really quiet, I still hear her. Or something that sounds exactly like her. Calling names not to be found, but to be remembered. So I remember, because forgetting would mean the whispers finally won. Porcelain doesn't breathe. At least that's what I used to think before that night taught me otherwise. My name's Zion. I'm 24 now, but I was 19 when this unfolded. I grew up in Brookdale, a small neighborhood where every street knows your name, and every lawn decoration becomes a seasonal competition. Our community runs an annual fall block party, but the late October edition is always the loudest. Kids sprint around dressed in rubber suits, fake fangs, neon wigs, parents chasing them with hot apple cider in one hand and their dignity in the other. I volunteered at the event every year because it felt like a break in time, until time broke back. That year, the council wanted to go bigger, so they shut down Maple Street and lined it with hay bales, cornstalk arches, strings of yellow bulbs that buzzed gently like a hive settling for winter. The air smelled of charred sugar from candied nuts, mixed with wet leaves slowly decomposing in the gutters after a day of drizzle. The humidity clung to your clothes. It didn't feel cold like winter. It felt damp like something waking up. I was stationed near the judging table, handing out contestant tokens and keeping the line organized. The table itself was draped in a deep purple cloth, velvet textured, soft under the palms, and covered with pumpkins carved by local art students. Some goofy, some excellent, but none unsettling. Except for the mask sitting in the center. No one knew where it came from. The announcement just said a special prize donated by a mystery benefactor. It wasn't packaged, not labeled, not cushioned in foam like something fragile should be. It sat directly on the table like it owned the surface. A porcelain face, white as bleached bone. The surface glazed so perfectly it almost looked wet under the lights. The grin was serene but too long, too eager. Not evil, worse than evil. Exaggerated joy, the kind that hides hunger. Its eyes were hollow for vision, but painted around the edges in gold filigree. Not blinking, yet intense. I remember leaning in to dust a bit of hay off the cloth, and the mask glinted at me so sharply I saw myself in its shine for less than a breath. My reflection looked wrong. Longer face, wider smile. I jolted back, blamed the warped surface, moved on, or tried to. The contest began. The crowd circled in. Their voices overlapped. Laughter, chatter, applause, squeaking shoes on asphalt. The occasional dog barking at plastic skeletons like it was in a philosophical argument. Everyone was alive, loud, warm. The finalists were announced. 10 contestants stepped forward. But the mask, it seemed brighter every minute, almost eager, like a spotlight had narrowed just for it. I swear the air near it smelled cleaner too, like sterile medicine masking infection. Then came the winner, Leora. She was a school friend of mine, spirited, charming, theater kid confidence, someone who spoke in smiles. She won wearing a dramatic Victorian plague-style costume, lace gloves, and boots that clicked like punctuation marks when she walked. The crowd cheered as she stepped up. Her breath was visible in the damp warmth like mist leaving a cup of tea. She picked up the mask. The moment it touched her skin, the air shifted around me. A stillness rippled outward, subtle enough that only animals or the doomed would sense it, but strong enough that even a street full of chatter faltered in its rhythm. She set it to her face. The grin aligned perfectly with hers, like it knew her measurements better than she did. Then it pulled, not snapped, not jerked, pulled, like suction, like thirst. A high, thin sound leaked out, something between a gasp and a gasp being eaten. The mask tightened. You could see it tightening, shrinking smaller in her hands though it was solid, rigid. The edges compressed against her cheeks, then sank, then blended. Her fingers clawed at it. Nails clattered on porcelain, frantic taps like insects pacing inside a glass jar. The mask was fusing with her, becoming her, replacing her. Stop! It's just part of the act. One judge yelled, confused. It wasn't an act. Leora's veins bulged at her throat. The lace gloves creaked under strain as her hands shook. Then the smile on the mask elongated further. Wider. Stressed. The corners pushed outward until her real mouth couldn't contain it anymore. Her lips began to split, but the sound she made came out as laughter. Muffled, strangled laughter, leaking through a mouth that was no longer properly sealed. It wasn't giggling, it wasn't amusement. It was the noise of someone screaming behind a smile that had teeth on both sides. The judges scrambled back. Their chairs screeched. I dropped the tokens in my hand. They pattered to the street like tiny wooden bones. Leora's laughter warbled again, wet this time, like liquid clogging a pipe. Her body stood straight, chin up, chest open like she was presenting for applause. Then came the dance. Her knees bucked, then flung outward, arms raised, twisting in angles a marionette maker would apologize for. She bowed deeply, then spun, then curtsied, then leaped. The mask was controlling her, choreographing her, forcing performance through pain. The street lamps flickered but didn't die. Maybe even electricity didn't want to look directly. Parents rushed in. Men tried pulling the mask by its temples. Women grabbed Leora's shoulders to still her. Their hands slipped on syrupy warmth spreading from beneath the edges. At first I thought it was rainwater caught in glaze, until I smelled it. Blood. Her blood was seeping out in steady drool streams beneath the porcelain rim. It dripped slow but thick, drawing lines down her neck, down her costume, onto the velvet cloth, turning it black by saturation. The droplets didn't sprinkle. They plopped, heavy, deliberate, like addresses. "She can't breathe," someone cried. "She's laughing," someone else countered in terror. Both were true and both were the same sin. Finally, the mask loosened. Not because it relented, but because it finished. The suction hissed. A quiet little sigh like thirst finally unlatched. It fell and shattered. Porcelain shards clinked to asphalt like snowflakes made of knives. And Leora collapsed. Her face was unfinished. No lips, just the raw architecture of red muscle and split skin where lips should have been. Her teeth were exposed, not grinning, but trapped in a shape grinning had carved into her bones. The smile wasn't gone. It stayed etched into her face, permanent like a signature you didn't sign. The crowd backed up, choking on horror they'd inhaled too carelessly. The smell of blood mixed now with sugary burning from toppled candles that were still hissing on the ground. Council declared it a tragic party accident involving an unsafe prop. News vans never came. Reports never spread beyond Brookdale, like the story was embarrassed into silence. Leora didn't disappear. Sometimes surviving is worse. Because sometimes I see her walking at twilight on Maple Street. A scarf loosely wrapped around her lower face, though there are no lips left to warm. She doesn't laugh anymore. She smiles silently, teeth showing, porcelain-carved grin wider than sorrow deserves. And every year since then, our costume contest has no anonymous prizes. But I still smell porcelain seconds before winter begins. Clean and sterile, and thirsty. We never meant to invite anything. We never meant to stay long enough to be answered. But the dead don't care much for intention. My name's Irfan. I live to tell this story, but sometimes I'm not sure if alive is the right word for it. The night everything changed, I was 17. Cocky, loud, certain nothing the world could throw could stick. A few friends and I planned a Halloween surprise party for our buddy Horace. He had been dealing with a rough year, and we figured something dramatic and different would pull him out of his slump. The idea was born in a coffee shop booth, scribbled on tissue paper with chai rings soaking the corners. "Scary but fun," Safa said with a grin. None of us knew what a dangerous understatement that was. The farmhouse we picked sat 20 minutes past Brookdale's last streetlight, off Cedar Hollow Road, swallowed by overgrowth. It had been empty since before we were in school. The locals always avoided it, but more out of inconvenience than reputation. There were stories, sure. There are always stories about abandoned places, but nothing official. No murders on record. No fires reported. No tragedy the newspapers bothered to print. To us, it was the perfect set piece. Secluded, old, weather-beaten, begging for a late-night reveal. We drove there in Sumer's pickup. Four of us squeezed shoulder to shoulder in the back seat with grocery bags full of candles, snacks, and costume props. The truck rattled across potholes and gravel, punctuated by the rhythmic whine of cicadas losing strength for the year. The air pressed cold and damp through the cracks of the windows, not harsh like December, but clammy like soil stirred too deep. The smell of pine trees mixed with something older, earth, mildew, and a faint sourness that lingered at the back of the tongue like spoiled milk kept in metal containers. It hung in the humidity, sticky and curious. The farmhouse revealed itself slowly through the branches as the headlights cut through the night. Its silhouette rocked gently as the truck rolled closer, like it was swaying. That illusion might have saved us if it had stayed an illusion. The walls were warped gray wood with black moss freckles, the windows long shattered and jagged, shards still glinting in the frames like frozen lightning. The front door slouched open by default, one hinge crooked, complaining in the wind. The roof looked intact from a distance, but up close you could see sections caved in, wood splintered inward like ribs cracked open. We stepped out of the truck, boots sinking into soggy autumn ground. Leaves layered the soil in wet blankets. Every step exhaled a soft crunch mixed with a squelch. The temperature wrapped around our necks, licking at exposed skin. My breath fogged out visibly in the darkness, but the fog spread sideways instead of dispersing upward, as if something low wanted to read before it faded. "Bro, this place is dramatic AF," Sumer said with a chuckle. It was in the wrong direction. Inside, the house felt warmer than outdoors, but not comfortable, occupied. A thick, stagnant warmth pressed like held breath in an elevator after too many passengers leave. The floorboards were distorted, water-damaged, glossy with condensation. They didn't creak like wood aging. They creaked like wood remembering. Slow, surgical, complaining in a rhythm that sounded almost familiar. My palm brushed a wall as I entered and the surface was tacky, fibers just slightly raised, as if the wood had absorbed years of damp whispers. We cleared the center room for the surprise. The ceiling drooped dangerously but had one main beam crossing the center, a massive dark timber running from one end to the other. The wallpaper peeled, openly revealing naked wood underneath in thin curling sheets. The scent of the room was layered, burning sugar from our snacks, dust heavier near corners where no footsteps disturbed it, and beneath everything a faint mineral blood odor that didn't quite belong until events redefined our sense of belonging. We set candles in a circle on the table. The glass jar nuts rattled as Safa emptied them out, still humming. I pulled a dusty crate over near the corner for seating, the wood surprisingly smooth under my palm where dust had avoided clinging. Felt intentional, but I ignored it. We all ignored almost everything that could have saved us. The Ouija board was supposed to be part of the theatrics. Safa laughed as she unpacked it from a floral tote that contrasted sharply with the house's insides. "Spirits, if you're here, don't be useless," she joked dramatically. The board answered anyway, because the planchette moved. On its own, without fingertips. It drifted across the board like a pond ripple pulled by a magnet buried below the surface. Spelled out, "I'm here." Not hurried, not theatrical, calm, scholarly, like it was reciting a fact. The candles flickered sharply without breeze. The flames bent low, nearly horizontal, like eyelashes fluttering in agitation. The temperature around me thinned like blood rushing up from limbs toward the core. My skin prickled. My spine tightened. "Guys," I said softly, because loudness had died in the room without permission. Nobody asked a question. Safa's mouth twitched, unsure if she wanted to laugh or gag. "Okay, new rule. No one touch this thing," she croaked. Then the door slammed shut behind us. A heavy bang, dull like a fist hitting soil-covered wood. Dust flung from the corners when it hit as if the house jolted awake, startled by noise. The slam created a pressure shift so large it sucked candle flames taller, then dropped them low again, performing against logic. "Wind probably," Sumer said, but there was no conviction left in his voice now, just denial panting like a dying animal. Then came footsteps overhead. Slow, rhythmic, heel first as though boots were pacing across wooden floors above. Each footfall was deliberate and precise, but the upper floor's ceiling had collapsed years ago. We saw the sky through the gaping hole on our way in. There should have been no floor above, no ability to carry steps. Gravity should have folded anything overhead into the space below long ago. Each footfall was a memory in would form now, pacing overhead like punctuation marks in a poem about dread. "Stop," Sumer whispered instead, voice cutting through his bravado like paper against rust. The lights died at the same moment, not flickered, died. A fast darkness snapping over everything like a sheet pulled over a cage. The stillness was loud enough to punch. Fingers brushed mine in the dark. Cold, smooth, metallic. Not bone, not skin, something slicker. Something studied. I yanked my hand back, clutching air that tasted of pennies. Horace hasn't arrived yet. The surprise guest list was incomplete. But a new presence filled the blanks anyway. My brother kicked the generator switch near the truck. The lights coughed awake again, flickering twice before committing to pale yellow. The table was overturned. Candles rolled and died bleeding wax trails on the moss-stained floor. The Ouija board lay in the middle, untouched in position except for that moved planchette spelling "I'm here" calmer than explanation deserved. But the real surprise sat upstairs. Because Horace was missing. "Horace!" I yelled. It ricocheted through the belly of the house, consumed quickly by quiet. We checked every corner. Nothing. The ceiling hole yawned open, visibly showing night sky textured in clouds. The wind moaned through the gaps, now mocking intrusion. "No, no upstairs," Safa whispered, because denial was a thin veil now. But something scratched footsteps on non-existent floors overhead. The mineral smell thickened, almost metallic, like iron pipes sweating in basements in old hospitals. We had to look. We climbed the collapsed staircase, or what remained of it, leaning dangerously like a rib cage spiraling inward. The beam was visible again, crossing overhead. Except above, through the ceiling hole, was another ceiling. Another intact beam parallel above. As if the house stacked itself again the way it once was before collapse admitted defeat. And Horace hung there, neck angled wrong, costume boots dangling. His grin stretched but not joyful. Something pleasured in theatrics forced his mouth, stretched wider than humanity could authorize. The sound he made wasn't screaming. It was laughter coughed upward, smothered by dust. We panicked, grabbing his legs. His body swayed slowly, boots tapping gently against beams that shouldn't exist. We clawed until our palms stuck wet. I smelled it again, copper. Wet iron. Blood smeared beneath, porcelain shards scattered above and below like snowflakes carved from knives. Then a whisper murmured overhead, calm, satisfied. "Thank you for the invitation." We ran. We spilled out into the truck wheels, spitting gravel backwards like scattershot prayers. None of us breathed properly until headlights were swallowed by dawn. Horace's family never found his body when the cops returned. They found an empty circle of melted wax, and an old wooden beam collapsed again the way collapse insisted. Sometimes I still feel those cold metallic fingers brush mine every autumn, heavy in humidity, pressing sideways. The Ouija board remains in my closet, buried beneath tarps, and exam notes a memory carved into wood, calm and curious. And each time lights flicker twice before committing, I know something else is judging the contest, now choosing its own winner again. I used to love loud, messy nights. I'm not sure I even like quiet anymore, but it's better than what I heard that night. My name's Denial. I was a second-year university student when this happened, studying late nights and early deadlines at Crestwood College. There are plenty of wild parties on campus, especially in October. That particular night, a frat-style dorm house on the north corner of the grounds hosted one of the biggest Halloween college parties of the year. I went with 3 friends, thinking it would be a stupid fun escape after midterms. Nothing more. The house was already vibrating when we got there. Bass-heavy music pulsed against the walls, thudding like a giant heartbeat trapped in drywall. The front porch boards flexed under bodies constantly pacing, bouncing, spilling inside. Cheap fog machines pumped neon-lit mist that smelled faintly of overheated plastic and artificial berry. Wet autumn air clung to my jacket. Tasted of cold metal when I inhaled too deeply. Inside, it was instant sensory overload. Costumes brushed shoulders in every direction. Synthetic capes, rubber horns, fake fur, glitter-sprayed masks that shed dust like dandruff from mythical creatures. The room was warm, sweaty, human-dense. Every inhale tasted like someone else's breath. The ceiling fans clicked as they rotated, blades wobbling like tired wings. Even the lights looked exhausted, flickering gently above the chaos. And then there was the punch bowl. It sat in the center of the main table like a trophy everyone instinctively bowed toward, though no one meant to. A massive decorative skull-shaped bowl, grinning stupidly but cast in thick plastic resin. Yellow bulbs inside its hollow eyes glowing like late-night warning beacons. The punch was labeled Vampire Special Edition. Try if you dare. Corny, sure. We mocked it. We still drank it. The first sip punched back. It was heavy, dense, sugary, but under the sweetness was a shockingly real metallic tang. Rich and iron deep, like licking a coin dipped in syrup. It wasn't strawberry sweet. It was copper sweet, like blood if blood tried to be candy. Bro, this tastes expensive. One guy nearby laughed. Gives you abs just drinking it, another replied. Everyone kept going back. So did I. Heat rose up from the bowl every time a cup dipped in. Warm vapor slipping upward in thin snakes like the punch itself was exhaling. I remember thinking it was just room temperature difference, maybe the resin lights warming the rim. Nothing supernatural, just uncomfortable physics. But uncomfortable physics can feel personal when you're standing too close. After maybe 20 minutes, something changed. A barely audible slosh beneath the music. Deep inside the bowl, thicker than liquid, almost like something shifting position underwater. The punch rippled once, a slow, fat wave rolling from one side to the other, though no one had bumped the table. "Huh," I murmured, but my voice got swallowed by bass. It rippled again, harder. A sharp swirl rose to the surface like spoon stirring from somewhere too deep. One cup floated up upside down, spinning lazily like a dying satellite. Then something small bobbed beside it. A tooth, white, intact, root still attached with a dark red thread of pulp fluttering like wet ribbon in syrup. My stomach dropped cold. The room was warm, but my body wasn't. I reached forward, leaning over the skull's hollow grin and stabbed my fingers toward the punch. My hand hit something solid beneath the surface. Something curved. The punch swirled aggressively then stilled, revealing more shapes drifting upward. Another tooth, then another, then something long, bone-colored, slender, rising slowly like dawn light pulled backward. A finger, then another, pale. Real nail beds, bluish at the moons like frostbite signatures. The music faltered, speakers buzzing awkwardly like someone yanked a cable wrong. The crowd sensed disturbance by instinct, not clarity. Their laughter hitched down into awkward silence, strings snapping. I heard someone whisper behind me, "What the?" We backed away together like a synchronized retreat prayer. Then movement. The punch convulsed violently, bursting upward in thick wet surges, splashing out like recoil from something curling and unfurling below. The bowl's content sloshed again, revealing more anatomy rising in pieces and coherence. Curled body, folded impossibly tight inside the bowl. Knees coiled against chest, spine bent sharp angular like geometry gone malicious. The bowl wasn't big enough. Her limbs weren't short enough. Nothing fit. Yet everything fit because it bent until fit meant pain. Pink costume socks visible first, soaked entirely in red sticky punch, making them black by saturation. A sweater curled up over arms, now knuckle white where blood pressurized. Her blonde wig stuck to her real head, plastered by syrup, except punch wasn't syrup anymore. Copper thick. "Help?" she tried, but sound gurgled into waterlogged laughter as if her vocal cords were drowning in punch itself. The room snapped awake screaming. Real screams now, not festive ones. People leaped back like ricochet scattershot prayers hitting walls. The bowl shook again, wobbling violently on the table's center, skull grin rattling like teeth chattering before collision. Security guards stormed in, boots thudding deeper punctuation than music deserved. "We tried pulling her out," Safa told the police later. Hands shaking wrapped in evidence bags. Red still clinging under fingernails like paint that didn't ask permission. We pulled until her arms bruised white, but she just bent deeper like a folding creature apologizing to geometry. By the time we thought to lift her properly without pulling, the bowl threw her upward. Not gracious, not merciful, finished. She hit the floor like punctuation delivered by gravity itself, ribs snapping inward as if geometry demanded last interest. The bowl cracked too, splitting across the skull, nose leaking tiny fractures like tears carved into ceramics. The punch that dribbled out now was thick and real iron-rich. Not sugary anymore, just copper and wound. The host, a guy named Kaleem I barely knew, was weeping, confused, frantic, repeating, I didn't know. I just bought it off a guy near town. No packaging, just prize donation. That's all." The room temperature dropped noticeably when silence finally dared settle. The autumn humid warmth thinning into something colder, eating sugar residue in air, except copper taste lingered deeper. When the police reviewed cameras, they found the last horror important detail no one had stomach for at the festive beginning. Hours before the party began, the punch bowl had been shaking. Slight vibrations, rhythmic, as if someone folded inside was trying to get out. But no one was there to help, and no one knew invitation was already extended. The case was sealed as unauthorized prop malfunction, unknown victim origin. But origins don't matter much to the dead when you drink their punch and gulp geometry into complicity. Because every October now, when cups clink too close to decorative skull props shimmering under yellow lights, I swear I hear that bowl shake faintly again underneath bass that no longer comforts, just smothers. And the worst part, sometimes, late when autumn air pushes sideways instead of upward, I feel punched warmth vapor coil around my hand, metallic cold, calling names not for rescue but memory. So I remember, because forgetting would mean she finally danced beneath geometry without audience. Backhand index pointing right. Would you like me to generate more stories like this one? Fearful face. Fire is supposed to consume things, not invite them. I'm Ahmed, 31. I work as a wildlife survey assistant in the northern stretch near Brookdale Ridge, a quiet cluster of forest-bordered houses that call themselves a neighborhood mostly because the mailman needed an address block. We don't get large celebrations here, so when the community WhatsApp lit up with Halloween bonfire behind the ridge, bring snacks, I thought it would be the usual loud laughter, bad roasted corn, and home before midnight. It was none of those things. The bonfire site was in the communal clearing just behind the last row of houses. Beyond it, the ridge sloped into dense pine forest. We reached around 8:40 p.m. The sky was moon-washed gray, a thin fog unspooling between the trees. The air was cold enough to tighten my fingers but humid enough to stick to skin. A smell of damp bark, charcoal from previous gatherings, and cinnamon drifting from someone's homemade donuts braided together in the breeze. The pit was already glowing. A small fire at first, kindling snapping like bones cracked by casual fingers. Neighbors milled around, faces orange tinted by flame, shadows knee-long on the grass. Children pretended to be scared, lunging with fake claws and shrieks. Rugs were laid on soil still soft from evening drizzle. Every laugh made the night feel safe, normal, until height entered the picture. I remember seeing the first shadow stretch against the treeline. It wasn't human height. It was idea of human height drawn by something that had studied us but never quite seen us straight. Tall, needle-thin shoulders rising like an exclamation mark. Limbs too long, hanging angles too patient. I blinked twice. Fire distortions, I told myself. Then it tilted its head back, even though it had no face yet. The fire cracked louder at the same moment, like punctuation to a sentence no one else had started speaking. "Harris? Is that you back there?" Someone called out from the crowd, a woman named Nita. Her voice was relaxed, faintly amused, the kind you use when you're shouting toward someone you expect to reply. The shadow didn't wave. It reached, lengthening a hand toward the warmth of the clearing. A hand that was already smudged black. No costume gloves, no trick lighting, just soot clinging to shape. The crowd murmured, confused but curious. Curiosity is a slower poison than fear, and Brookdale Ridge was full of the curious. Before I could frame a warning, Nita stepped forward, lantern in hand. The lantern was decorative, cheap LED with flicker mode, but in her grip it seemed almost brave. Its pale light skimmed uneven ground. The shadow folded itself back a step, almost shy, almost hunted. "Bro, chill. It might be one of the kids messing in costumes," my friend Kaleem said next to me, adjusting a marshmallow on a stick. His breath fogged upward briefly, catching the firelight before fading. I wanted to believe him. I wanted October to stay stupid fun. But the soot wasn't playful. Then another neighbor muttered, "I swear I saw my brother waving from the trees." Someone else said, "No, I heard my name. Low, like he was near my shoulder." The fire spat sparks aggressively upward as if trying to interrupt a whisper it didn't approve of. Then the shadows began walking in pairs. Not many, just 2, then 4, then 6 black silhouettes striding slow and assured at the treeline. Their heads slightly lowered, their arms hanging long but not limp. Anticipatory. Waiting for weight that warmth could offer. Kids stopped playing. Adults quieted as if synchronization finally found them by force. Lantern bulbs flickered like fear pulses in mammals. The forest just outside the clearing felt darker by comparison, warmer by invitation. One young guy, Raza, wandered forward whispering, "Era? I'm sure that's you. Why aren't you answering?" He sounded not afraid, but confused, emotional, like someone who heard a familiar voice from the wrong number. We hadn't heard any voice yet. That was the warning. Then his own voice folded into confusion. "Wait. Why is the ground breathing?" The ground didn't answer. The lantern flame did. Raza stepped into the darkness, overgrowth crunching syrupy wet under boots. The shadows around him, now had outlines flecked gray like soot, had begun assembling flesh over scaffolding. Their hands gripped his arm gently, at first too gently, like an invitation handshake coating pheromones. Then a rip sound, sharp and wet, broke against the quiet. Fabric splitting. Bone architecture complaining under geometry older than invitation authorization. A single scream surged upward, cut short as a hand clamped his mouth. The scream bubbled into laughter, gurgled by force. Then another scream, "Raza!" Then another, "Stop! Don't go!" Too late. Soot already owned direction. More neighbors wandered in one by one into the treeline. No face paint visible until too close. The silhouettes reached each neighbor as they entered, waiting for warmth to authorize definition. Their heads lowered, sniffing softness, breathing sideways like animals, uncertain but certain enough. Then the crowd heard the voices echo, whispered from forest interior, low, hungry, coaxing, intimate. "Ahmed, Nita, Kaleem, thank you for the invitation." Each name delivered, perfectly measured in dead mimicry, except emotions were drained, replaced by hunger curling inward. The dead had studied our vocal frequencies, coached by ash geometry worn into wood. The brave ones grabbed engines of denial. They ran in with lanterns, flicker LEDs still trembling like a dying lighthouse against wind-molested darkness. And those lanterns revealed the truth beneath fondant decorative narrative. Figures composed entirely of ash and soot, papered together over bone longibit frames that walked like anatomy shaped by flame study, not clothing design. Their faces were absent at first, then began to assemble as warmth climbed their scaffolding, smoothing shape measurements, stitching channels for humanity imitation. A final lantern beam swiped across one silhouette's face, and the smile it wore was carved out like woodcuts, deeper geometry than innocence deserved. Its grin spread too wide, splitting into charcoal flakes drifting downward like snow bearing malign identity. "Invitation accepted," it murmured in brittle warm ash crackle. Then it reached for us. Not to take warmth, to wear it. Lantern carriers tugged masks off our own faces because the shadows lunged, grabbing neck spines, twisting geometrically like marionettes begging gravity forgiveness. Blades I saw glint near treeline, fractured nails, slicing porcelain edges, lifting names not rescue. We dragged survivors out, except out didn't mean rescue anymore. It meant audience exit, a world built on consumption. By dawn, the clearing was empty. The metal bowls used for snacks were scorched inward, incomplete. Rugs stiffened black with syrup-dried soil. The fire pit was still roaring. Not smoldering, roaring, despite the fact that there was no wood left in it. No logs, no fuel, just flame, heat pushing outward like applause, a performance that didn't burn alone. Now, every October, I drive past that clearing on my survey routes. The pit still exists, barren, cold in daylight. But some nights when fog coils sideways, I swear I see shadows lean assemble taller than human geometry, lips carved by flame licking name syllables off the wind. And if I listen too closely, the wind tastes faintly of copper-sweet soot calling names not for rescue, but remembrance. So I remember, because forgetting would mean we invited the ashes twice. I still check doorway corners before I turn off any light. That's my version of a ritual now, one I never used to have. My name is Samir. I'm 27, and for the last 5 years I've worked backstage for event productions. Lighting, crowd flow, sound cues, and occasionally helping talent organizers wrangle performers who either show up late or forget their positions. I've handled hundreds of events, including haunted walkthrough shows every October at the Frostbourne Mansion. It's a sprawling Victorian-style estate booked seasonally by the local cultural council for Halloween nights. They hire actors to perform as ghosts, ghouls, or spectral hosts guiding guests through themed corridors and scare segments. This fake fear, curated, paid for, scheduled by a clipboard. Except for that one night when something joined the cast without a contract, a token, or even a name. The mansion sits on the outermost block near Brookdale Heights, bordered by untrimmed hedges, rust-green iron fencing, and a long curved drive that always smells of rain-stained stone. Even on dry nights, the walls sweat faintly. That evening wasn't dry. A lingering storm earlier in the day left microscopic droplets clinging to everything like reluctant fingerprints. The air was cold enough to numb the tips of your ears, but humid enough to haze your vision. Mist curled at ankle height across the foyer tiles every time someone opened the main doors. I arrived at 6:30 p.m. to run tech checks. The foyer was cavern huge, vaulted ceilings looming like a cathedral designed by someone who liked echo. I dropped my equipment case onto the tile floor, the sound snapping upward with a startling metallic pop. The noise traveled too far, rebounded too long, a brief reminder of how small a human voice really is in a place that big. The mansion smelled of dust disturbed after decades, layered beneath the sweeter scents from catering tables being set. Baked pumpkin, caramel syrup, cooling coffee, and the overstressed floral bite of fake perfume sprayed on costumes. The actors arrived at 7 p.m. I checked them in, handed out position maps, and led them to their wings. Everything was running normally until 9 p.m. when guests began filling the halls, laughter ricocheting off the walls like popcorn hitting metal bowls. Then I saw her for the first time. She was already in Corridor 3, near the East Wing Gallery, where portraits of unsmiling ancestors glare down like judges in suspended animation. She wore a heavy gray gown from another century, layered in soot-faded ruffles, the fabric dragging softly across the floor without rustling like fabric should. Her veil was lace-thick and black, falling over her face until shadow replaced identity. Unlike the other performers, she didn't lean, fidget, laugh, or check her cue cards. She simply stood, long-limbed, posture stretched slightly unnatural, fingers hanging relaxed but prepared, like someone mid-bow in a greeting ritual no one else studied in drama school. I assumed she was one of the hired Victorian ghosts. We had 6 in rotation, after all. But her silence had weight, intent, stillness loud enough to make nearby teenagers lower their phones and glance her direction without suggestion. She drifted forward when a cluster of guests approached. No cue, no footsteps, just movement gliding, not stepping, the gown sliding like a shadow rather than a garment. She raised a slender arm and pointed down a dark hallway branching toward the servant corridors. The lights there were dim by design, but she highlighted it like it was a discovery. Guests followed her instinctively. It was part of the show to pretend guidance. No one asked why she guided too personally. She paused at intersections, always directing them toward emptier, narrower, neglected hallways, behind catering tables, toward broken-winged staircases sealed behind velvet ropes. Toward rooms we dressed but never opened. Guests giggled nervously at first, then coughed silence when the rooms swallowed their voices ahead of permission. I felt the temperature drop nearer to those hallways. Cold tightening knuckles off skin, fabric of the world leaning inward. My breath fogged sideways instead of upward, an animal instinct signature of danger. I radioed to the organizer, Mira. Corridor 3 Victorian Ghost, overperforming, guiding segments early. Static crackled first, then her voice, confused. Everyone's at their cue spots, Samir. No early rotations scheduled yet. Well, she's definitely here, I muttered, watching guests bow politely at her presence, though she didn't bow back. The portraits on walls felt taller, darker, dragged inward by smoke residues older than electricity. We kept letting the show run because the mansion was designed to confuse direction anyway. But confusion can feel personal when someone invisible writes choreography on your nerves. At 10:10 p.m., a scream erupted upstairs. Not horror fun scream, a ripping scream, bone real, sharp enough to carve silence through 200 guests talking at once. The kind of scream that snaps ankles of illusion, leaving gravity embarrassed. I sprinted up the main staircase, boots pounding wooden boards that moaned under memory rather than age. The upstairs gallery smelled harsher. Burning electricity, hot metal from stressed bulbs, and that creeping copper-rich tang I now associate with absence. The beam she guided them toward was new, untouched by decoration. Just a structural timber rising as if the mansion rebuilt itself politely when collapse earlier was official fact. Horace hung there, face downward, body curved like geometry apologized. His lips blew white, laughter stuck like glue inside throat. I stumbled back, breath punched inward. Horace wasn't even the birthday guest. Wrong story, wrong winner. Mira arrived seconds behind me, lantern in hand. Lantern LED flicker mode sputtering as if light itself hesitated. She aimed it toward the ghost woman. The lantern illuminated her gown perfectly, but her face was absent architecture. No eyes, no sockets, just two cavernous black holes where vision should be. Endless, bottomless knowing, like someone carved absence, deliberately removing origin story's punctuation of identity. She lifted her veil slowly as Mira and I gasped back simultaneously. The lace veil ripped a little at temples like it was never meant to be lifted after invitation authorized. "I wasn't hired," she whispered, but her voice sounded exactly like the organizer Myra's voice, except emotions were drained, replaced by hunger-curling inward grammar of invitation accepted. Her fingers coated soot-shaping veins as she reached toward warmth, kneading skin to finish contract for identity. The crowd behind us screamed again, dispersing fractal geometry into exit vectors that didn't lead to rescue anymore, just directions, poorly lit rooms echoing footsteps overhead that had collapsed years ago. Security footage later confirmed what no witness wanted to believe. She walked through walls, multiple times, effortlessly, like drywall. Disagreement with anatomy didn't apply to her. One specific clip caught her moment of unveiling, exposing absence geometry, never compassioned. No actor recognized her in payroll next morning. No college art student admitted sculpting job. No beneficiary name existed for prize donation. Land records had no tragedies printed that embarrassed time itself. Horace's family never received a body. They received apology letters and refund coupons, though no coupons, warm throats carved from non-existence. But every October since then, when mansion heaters are off but warmth tastes too, personally held breath. I feel that gown drift near my neck, metallic cold calling names, not for contract signing but remembrance, because some invitations don't need ink, just audience. And someone always wins a contest they never entered. I survived. But each time fog curls sideways instead of upward, I feel judged by faces that don't blink but no measurements dragging inward by soot memory. If you ever stand near a skull-shaped bowl or beam parallel new built too politely, don't assume it's physics. Sometimes physics is hired. Sometimes geometry freelances, and the dead always expect payment. I narrate this now because silence is sharing space with colder laughter pressed by lace veil, denial thinner than gravity deserves. And I still check doorways before I turn off any light, because sometimes cast lists aren't the only thing choosing winners. I was never one for rituals. I'm a party DJ, 27 years old, and for the last 5 years I'd been spinning sets for every big college and community event in Lahore. Music for me was never supernatural. It was math, beats per minute, smooth transitions, crowd psychology, bass levels tuned just right so you feel the drop in your chest before you hear it. My job was to move people emotionally, not physically against their will. That night was supposed to be easy money. The event was held in an old colonial-style banquet hall near Mall Road, one of those century-old buildings the city keeps repainting to hide its age. From the outside, it looked grand enough. White pillars framing tall windows, chipped but dignified. Inside, the air smelled like chalk, furniture polish, and decades of accumulated humidity. The organizers wanted a Halloween theme, something theatrical, nothing serious. They even asked me to include a fake midnight dance ritual. Just a gag, they said. Start the beat at 12 o'clock sharp. Slow, creepy build-up, then a drop that feels cursed. Everyone would laugh. People love being part of a collective joke. I thought it was childish but harmless. By 11:40 p.m., the hall was packed. 200+ people in costumes, fog machines hissing, fake cobwebs drooping from crystal chandeliers that were real but yellowing with age. My booth was set up in front of an enormous mirror wall. 12 antique mirrors lined in a row, golden filigree borders scratched by time. I remember glancing at my reflection between songs, adjusting my headphones, unaware that the mirror wasn't just reflecting me. It was remembering everything it had ever seen. I killed the lights at 11:58 for dramatic effect. The crowd hooped. Feet shuffled eagerly. The floor beneath them was old oak, coated with a glossy finish that made every step echo slightly. Talk, talk, like someone tapping knuckles from underneath. I set the track to start exactly at midnight. A slow build-up, a steady, ominous 90 BPM heartbeat thrum. The crowd began swaying, hands raised, pretending to chant along to nothing, giggling. Phones glowing everywhere like floating fireflies in the dark. And then midnight hit. The first 2 seconds were normal. I cued the beat, one hand sliding the fader up. But the third second isn't mine. That second belonged to something else, lurking in the latency gap between sound and silence. Click, not from my board. From behind me, a sharp mechanical click, followed by a crackling hiss. The entire hall froze, confused. My speakers emitted a low, whirring groan like static being rewound. My heart thudded. Then, out of nowhere, music started again, but not the track I loaded. It was an old-fashioned melody, a gramophone tune, tinny, wavering, slow, like an ancient lullaby for the dead, crackled with dust, distortion, and time itself. The vibration coming through my headphones felt wrong, dry, like ash rubbing together, brittle sound waves scraping my eardrums. It was 78 revolutions per minute era music, the kind you only hear in old black and white films, carried by ghostly violins and hollow piano notes. The crowd murmured, "Is this part of the show?" I tried stopping it immediately, slamming the pause button. Nothing. I cut the master fader. The music played at full volume anyway, bypassing every control I owned. My equipment trembled under my palms, vibrating in rapid, spasmodic pulses, brrrr, 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 as if it was rejecting modern electricity and defaulting back to its birth language. Then the doors slammed shut. Every door in the hall. Not a push, a bang with intention, a force so solid it puffed dust off the frames, the impact punching the air itself. The lights flickered once, a white-blue zap, then died again. The fog machines hissed a final breath and choked out. The temperature dropped sharply. My skin prickled with sudden winter even though it was October. The crowd shivered. Breath steamed faintly. Then came the silence underneath the melody. Footsteps above us, which was impossible. The upper floor had partially collapsed years ago. I knew this because the manager mentioned it while showing me the emergency exits earlier. The ceiling might look intact, but the floor above was unsafe rubble. No one should be there. No one could be there. Yet the steps sounded firm, methodical, bare, heavy, creak, 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 long slow pressure, like someone pacing intentionally back and forth over rotten wood, testing where weak humans stood below. The room turned dizzyingly still. The only sound now the ghost record tune looping in the air like a command. And then our feet started moving. Not everyone instantly. No. It began like a suggestion the body can't ignore. At first, gentle toe tapping. Nervous. Then ankle swiveling. Then knees unlocking. Within seconds, the entire crowd was dancing in perfect, horrifying synchronization, but not to modern rhythm. To the old music. Their feet struck the oak in the same old-era cadence. Talk, 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 talk. I watched, frozen, as their shoes moved in patterns older than any choreography TikTok could invent. Arms twirled, necks tilted. Bodies jerked and flowed like invisible puppeteer strings were threaded through the floorboards into their bones. Someone screamed 6 seconds in. A sharp yelp as their ankle snapped. But the dancing never stopped. That crack sounded like a dry tree branch breaking. The student collapsed sideways, foot twisted outward at a brutal angle, and then that foot dragged itself back up, forcing the rest of his body to follow. He stood again. He danced again, teeth grinding, sweat cold on his face. Another scream, and another. Blood spatters hit the glossy floor from noses and ears, fine red mist catching invisible light as it sprayed. TCHK. TCHK. Like sticky droplets flicked off a paintbrush. A girl near the center began spinning fast. So fast her hair whipped around her like a black halo. Blood leaked from her eyes, dark thin streams spilling down her cheeks like wax trails. The smell reached me then, metallic, raw, nauseatingly warm and rich. It mixed with the scent of old wood and mold, creating a rotten sweet perfume of decay. More bodies twisted, joints making grotesque popping noises. Some knees bent backward momentarily, ka-pop, before resetting. One guy began dancing erratically, arms flailing, as though fighting the strings, until his shoulder dislocated with a sick, mushy crunch. SHLGKT. The sound was wet, organic, physical surrender. I tried calling security on my phone. No signal. I tried sprinting to the back exit. My feet stuck to the booth. Not held by glue, by something worse. Not physically restrained, but spiritually claimed. The floor hummed faintly under us, deep beneath hearing range. A subsonic rumble of possession that made every human body resonate like it was tuned to the wrong universe. Then someone pointed at the mirror wall. We all saw it then. Not our own reflections. Others. Tall, thin, charcoal dark figures. Limbs long and smoky like stretched shadows drawn in ink. They were dancing too, gracefully, silently, except for one mirror. In the sixth mirror from the left, the glass surface trembled, as if something inside it had been pounding to escape for hours. The shaking grew stronger, violent, urgent. Rumble thud, rumble thud, rumble thud. Then a handprint smeared against the inside of the mirror, followed by another. Then a face slammed forward. No eyes, just deep black pits, edges feathered like burned paper, absorbing every bit of sanity you tried holding on to. The gramophone loop let out a high-pitched spike, SEREHK, like a needle dragging across vinyl. That was when I tore myself away. My own sneakers ripped skin off my heels as I bolted, my steps the only ones that disobeyed the music now. I grabbed the emergency breaker and punched it down. Clunk! The hall went pitch black for a breathless second, the gramophone dying like a throat cut mid-song. Everyone dropped, lifeless, like the strings were yanked out in one cruel motion. The surviving students lay scattered, twitching faintly on the floor like static, disrupted insects. The banquet hall was quiet, truly quiet. No clicks, no pulses, no footsteps above, just human whimpering and torn tendons. But here's the part that keeps me awake. Later, when management reviewed the incident, they asked me what track I played at midnight. I could only describe it, not name it. No recording device had captured it. Not one. Every speaker log showed a blank audio output. And the mirrors? Every one was shattered in a spiderweb fracture by morning, except the sixth one. Organizer swears it was fine. But I know what I saw, because sometimes Late at night, when I'm editing sound for my YouTube channel or syncing beats for a short, I see motion in my own screen reflection. Just faint, just tall, just silent, dancing in a loop I never loaded. I still spin music at midnight sometimes when I'm alone. Not by choice, by reflex. And every time 12 o'clock hits, I hear a faint whisper in my skull, warm and grateful and ancient. Thank you for the invitation. And the mirrors in my apartment, I've turned them to face the wall, but I can still feel them smiling behind the glass.